Hello dear friends, welcome back to the Word from the Shed once again. 2020 hasn't been the best of years, has it? And unfortunately it's not over yet. COVID is still around and there are restrictions still around, and this as we begin to come into winter. We see the nights drawing in and our thoughts turn to getting through winter, especially if we're older or on our own. And during winter, human contact seems to be more important in many ways than during summer. There are many people who won't be able to have so much of it, so we remember them. Now in dark times, it's good to be encouraged by others who've been through them. And over the years, I've kept an eye on lots of literature that has come out of the Soviet Union, samizdat literature, illegal literature at the time that was being smuggled out. And I've returned to somebody called Irina Ratushinskya. You might have heard of her. She is a young poet, or was a young poet at the time, I think 29 when she was first arrested. And she wrote poetry from labour camps and severe punishment places. This is the book, and it's called No, I Am Not Afraid. And there you see her picture and a secretly taken photograph of a labour camp behind it. There's her name, and I'll put it in the description box afterwards. And I'd like to read just a little bit from the introduction first, and then one of her poems. Irina Ratushinskya was sent to a Soviet hard labour camp in April 1983. She suffered beatings, force feeding and solitary confinement in brutal, freezing conditions, and became so gravely ill that many feared she would not survive her sentence. Her crime was the manufacture and dissemination of her poems. Arrested for the second time in April 1982, she was charged with anti-Soviet agitation and propaganda, and finally sentenced in 1983 to 7 years hard labour and 5 of internal exile, the maximum possible punishment for this offence. Later on, we're told in 1986 that Dr. David Owen, one time Foreign Secretary for Great Britain, gave a copy of a book to Mikhail Gorbachev and another to Ronald Reagan. It was under those two leaders and Margaret Thatcher that the Berlin Wall came down and things like perestroika came in, and gradually there was an unfreezing of the Cold War. And she was freed finally in 1986 and then allowed to emigrate to Great Britain that same year. So it was all part of the build-up. The escape of her poems from labour camps was all part of the build-up towards the ending of the Soviet regime. And the poem I want to read is this: To My Unknown Friend. Above my half of the world, the comets spread their tails. In my half of the century, half the world looks me in the eye. In my hemisphere, the wind's blowing. There are feasts of plague without end, but a searchlight shines in our faces, and their faces the touch of death. And our madness retreats from us, and our sadnesses pass through us. And we stand in the midst of our fates, setting our shoulders against the plague. We shall hold it back with ourselves. We shall stride through the nightmare. It will not get further than us. Don't be afraid on the other side of the globe. She's saying that their sufferings and their standing against it will stop the spread of this plague of communism, Soviet atheistic totalitarianism from spreading to the West. It's their suffering that in a way has kept us free. Do get the book, it's really worth reading. It's only about 142 pages. So Irina's sufferings, with millions of other Russians, Kulaks, Ukrainians, Romanians, Poles, the list goes on, throughout the Soviet era, were bravely borne. And the writings that came out were born of suffering. And they reveal that there is a light that never goes out, a light that these sufferers carried with them, that no brutality and hardship could extinguish. And this light gives us a moral defence against the evils of political idealism and brutality, such as that which engulfed the Eastern Bloc for most of the 20th century. Many of the writers of Samizdat were actually believers, Christian believers. That includes Solzhenitsyn, that includes Irina Ratushinskya. Jesus said, "I am the light of the world. Whoever follows me will never walk in darkness, but will have the light of life." The cross of Christ is a moment of the deepest darkness for the world, foretelling the fate of humanity without Christ. But it is also the greatest defence against the darkness for those who believe. For God has rescued us from the dominion of darkness, writes St. Paul, and brought us into the kingdom of the Son he loves, in whom we have redemption, the forgiveness of sins. Times of trial can be a crucible in which our attitudes are tested and refined. We are faced with our personal weaknesses and sin, but we are also faced with a choice, if we allow ourselves to be. Will I surrender to the despair of darkness, or will I allow Christ to shine his light into my life, forgive my fears, doubts, waywardness and wrong attitudes, and so carry me through the outer darkness by the strength of his inner light? Irina Ratushinskya and so many like her refused to allow the light within to be conquered by the darkness without. Jesus said, "I am the light of the world," but he also said to his followers, "You are the light of the world. Let your light so shine before the people." So in these difficult times, we believers can tend carefully the flame of Christ that burns within us and allow it to shine to the comfort of those with whom we share this present darkness. Let's take our cue from those brave souls who went through the Soviet persecutions and bring encouragement to all of us in times of darkness. Bye for now. Thanks for watching. Do subscribe if you'd like to, and share if you'd like to. I'll put lots of stuff in the description box for you to help you follow this through. So God bless you, and see you next Sunday.